Friends from the media, good morning. Welcome to this press conference for the second session of the 14th National People's Congress. Our topic today is China's foreign policy and external relations. We are delighted to have with us Mr. Wang Yi, member of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee and Foreign Minister. He will brief you and take up your questions. Thank you. Friends from the media, good morning. I'm very pleased to meet you again during the NPC and CPPCC sessions. I heard that you arrived here very early. I salute your hard work. The world landscape today is undergoing profound transformation, and human society is confronted with multiple challenges. In this changing and turbulent international environment, China will remain a staunch force for peace, stability, and progress of the world. In his report to the 20th National Congress of the CPC, General Secretary Xi Jinping pointed out that although this is an era fraught with challenges, it is also an era brimming with hope. China will stand firmly on the right side of history and on the side of human progress, and will advocate vigorously peace, development, cooperation, and mutual benefit. It will pursue its development along with its efforts for peace and development of the world, and at the same time, it will make greater contributions to world peace and development through its own development. It was also stressed in the report that the CPC is dedicated both to pursuing happiness for the Chinese people and rejuvenation for the Chinese nation, and to promoting human progress and world harmony. That is our mission and our duty. It is also our aspiration and our goal. With that, I'm ready to take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. The floor is now open for questions.
请北区第4排第一位男士，谢谢。
First question, please.
谢谢主持人，王外长您好，中央广播电视总台央视记者提问：过去1年，中国特色大国外交全面推进，您认为去年中国外交取得的最突出的成果有哪些？去年年底呢，举行了中央外事工作会议，这次会议认为中国特色大国外交将进入一个可以更有作为的新阶段。那么您能否透露一下，今年中国外交会有哪些值得期待的亮点？中国外交会在哪些方面更有作为？谢谢。
China Central Television. Foreign Minister Wang, could you talk us through China's most impressive diplomatic achievements in the past year? At the Central Conference on Work Relating to Foreign Affairs, it was pointed out that major country diplomacy with Chinese characteristics would enter a new stage where much more could be accomplished. Could you share with us what highlights we could expect in the year ahead, and in what areas of its diplomacy will China seek to accomplish more?
The year 2023 not only witnessed pioneering efforts, but also great harvests in China's diplomacy. Under the strong leadership of the CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, the Chinese Foreign Service fully implemented the guiding principles set forth at the 20th CPC National Congress. We took steps to promote international solidarity and cooperation and offered solutions to crises and challenges. We contributed to world peace and development and broke new ground in China's diplomatic theory and practice. In the past year, President Xi Jinping hosted 2 major diplomatic events in China, attended 3 multilateral summits, made 4 important overseas visits, and had more than 100 meetings and phone calls. Head of state diplomacy is getting increasingly irreplaceable in providing strategic guidance. The Central Asian region and the Indochina Peninsula all embrace the vision of a community with a shared future for mankind, and new progress was made in the joint efforts by China and African, ASEAN, Arab and Latin American and Caribbean countries to realize the same vision. The 3rd Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation was a success, taking Belt and Road cooperation to a new stage of high-quality development. BRICS achieved a historic expansion, opening a new chapter of united strength for the Global South. We facilitated the historic reconciliation between Saudi Arabia and Iran and mediated a ceasefire agreement in northern Myanmar. We promoted political settlement of all hotspots and conflicts. We resolutely opposed all hegemonic and bullying acts and effectively safeguarded China's sovereignty, security, and development interests, as well as the common interests of developing countries. We conducted diplomacy to serve the Chinese people and to fully support the development and stability of the country. At the Central Conference on Work Relating to Foreign Affairs at the end of last year, President Xi Jinping outlined a comprehensive plan for China's external work for the present and beyond, which was a top-level design for China's diplomatic strategy on the new journey. We'll study and implement the guiding principles of the conference in real earnest. We'll follow the guidance of Xi Jinping thought on diplomacy, focus on building a community with a shared future for mankind, and act with a stronger sense of historical responsibility and a more vibrant spirit of innovation to accomplish more in our major country diplomacy with Chinese characteristics. We'll be more confident and self-reliant in cultivating the features of China's diplomacy. Our national development and rejuvenation will always be based on our own efforts, and the future of the Chinese people will always be in our own hands. We will remain firm in pursuing the independent foreign policy of peace and resolutely safeguard China's sovereignty and national dignity. We will be more open and inclusive and conduct diplomacy with a broad vision. We will consolidate and expand our global network of partnerships, promote a new type of international relations, and promote mutual respect and mutual learning between civilizations. We'll strive for stability in major country relations, common progress with our neighbors, and rejuvenation with fellow countries in the global south. Will uphold fairness and justice and further establish the ethos of China's diplomacy. Will practice true multilateralism and promote greater democracy in international relations. On issues of principle concerning the legitimate rights and interests of developing countries and the future of humanity, we will be more unequivocal, and we will shoulder greater moral responsibility and press ahead in the right direction of history. We'll promote win-win cooperation and stay true to the ideal of China's diplomacy. We'll stay on the right path of seeking solidarity and cooperation, offer more solutions with Chinese wisdom to regional hotspots and global issues, and provide more public goods in the interest of world peace and development. China's new development will bring about new opportunities to the world. Thank you. Next question. Please. Russia, Sebotnia.
今是俄罗斯国际屯村社、俄罗斯卫星屯村社提问。今年是俄中建交75周年，这些年来，双边关系得到了前所未有的发展水平。在您看来，在当前国际关系全球转型的条件下，如何才能最有效地发掘俄中合作的潜力？谢谢。
Rossiya Savotnia and Sputnik. This year marks the 75th anniversary of diplomatic ties between Russia and China. The bilateral relationship has grown to an unprecedented level in recent years. Given the ongoing global transition in international relations, what do you think is the most effective way to tap the potential of Russia-China cooperation?
Under the strategic guidance of President Xi Jinping and President Vladimir Putin, the China-Russia Comprehensive Strategic Partnership of Coordination for the New Era has been moving forward on a high level. Political mutual trust is deepening, cooperation remains mutually beneficial and complementary to each other. The two peoples are enthusiastic about mutual exchanges. Last year, bilateral trade reached the record $240 billion, hitting the target of $200 billion ahead of schedule. Russian natural gas is fueling numerous Chinese households, and Chinese-made automobiles are running on Russian roads. All this shows the strong resilience and broad prospects of China-Russia mutually beneficial cooperation. Maintaining and growing the China-Russia relationship is a strategic choice by the two sides based on the fundamental interests of the two peoples. It is also what we must do to keep pace with the trend of the world. As key major countries of the world and permanent members of the UN Security Council, China and Russia have forged a new paradigm of major country relations that differs entirely from the obsolete Cold War approach. On the basis of non-alliance, non-confrontation, and not targeting any third party, China and Russia strive for lasting good neighborliness and friendship and seek to deepen their comprehensive strategic coordination. In today's world, hegemonism finds no support and division leads nowhere. Major countries should not seek confrontation and the Cold War should not be allowed to come back. The China-Russia relationship moves ahead along the trend of the times toward multipolarity and greater democracy in international relations, and is thus very important for maintaining global strategic stability, enabling positive interactions among major countries, and promoting cooperation among emerging major countries. This year marks the 75th anniversary of China-Russia diplomatic relations. The two sides will also jointly launch the China-Russia Years of Culture. The relationship faces new opportunities. China is ready to work with Russia to foster new driving forces for cooperation and steadily enhance the foundation of friendship between the two peoples. With Russia chairing the BRICS mechanism this year and China taking over the chairship of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in the second half of this year, the two sides will strengthen international and multilateral coordination, practice true multilateralism, uphold the UN-centered international system, and safeguard regional and global security and stability. Thank you.
谢谢，请大家继续提问。请南区第二排
Next
第二位
question,
女士提问。
please.
谢谢。
谢谢主持人，王外长您好，我是人民日报社记者。中央外事工作会议指出，构建人类命运共同体是新时代中国特色大国外交追求的崇高目标。近年来，我们看到中国与不少国家宣布共建命运共同体。请问外长，您如何看待构建人类命运共同体的前景？谢谢。
People's Daily. At the Central Conference on Work Relating to Foreign Affairs, it was pointed out that building a community with a shared future for mankind is China's lofty goal in conducting major country diplomacy with Chinese characteristics for the new era. In recent years, China has announced it would strive for that goal together with quite a number of countries. How do you see the prospect of building a community with a shared future for mankind?
Building a community with a shared future for mankind is the core tenet of Xi Jinping's thought on diplomacy. It is China's solution to the question of what kind of world to build and how to build it. President Xi Jinping has stressed many times that humanity live in the same global village and travel in the same boat, facing various global challenges coming our way. Countries should rise above their differences in history, culture, geography, and system, and work together to protect the Earth, the only inhabitable planet for us all, and make it a better place. This important tenet demonstrates President Xi Jinping's broad historical vision and deep passion for the world as the leader of a major country. It goes beyond the obsolete zero-sum game mentality, assumes the moral high ground of civilization, and captures the shared aspirations of all nations. It points the right direction for humanity at a historical inflection point where accelerated transformation unseen in a century is unfolding across the world. Building a community with a shared future for mankind has become a glorious banner leading the progress of the times. It is also the lofty goal of our major country diplomacy with Chinese characteristics for the new era. It's been 10 fruitful years for this vision since President Xi Jinping put it forward. It has developed from a conceptual proposition to a scientific system, from a Chinese initiative to an international consensus, and from a promising vision to practical outcomes, showing strong vitality. From bilateral partners to multilateral institutions, from regional frameworks to global initiatives, and from public health to cyberspace and oceans, China has been building communities with a shared future with scores of countries and regions in multiple forms and domains. Time and again, the vision has been written into UN General Assembly resolutions as well as resolutions and declarations of the SCO, BRICS, and other multilateral mechanisms. The evolution of the international situation in recent years shows again and again that the number one reality in today's world is that all countries rise and fall together, and that the short path to meeting the challenges is mutual assistance and win-win cooperation. More and more countries and peoples have come to realize that the future of humanity should be decided by all countries together, and that the future of the world should be built by all peoples together. China is ready to work with all countries to build an open, inclusive, clean, and beautiful world of lasting peace, universal security, and shared prosperity. The road ahead may be tortuous, but the future is bright. Thank you.
请继续提问。中区第三排右旗第二位，彭博社 Murphy。
Bloomberg, please.
Thank you. So, a question from Bloomberg. After last year's meeting in San Francisco, the China and the US agreed to jointly manage differences and promote mutually beneficial cooperation. Since then, the US has continued to increase its trade and technological restrictions. My question is, how does China think this trend will change in the next 1 to 2 years? And how does China plan to respond to this? Thank you.
彭博社，自去年中美元首旧金山会晤后，中美就共同处理分歧、推进互利合作达成了共识，但美方仍持续对华增加贸易和科技限制。中方认为，未来1至2年间，这一趋势是否会有所转变？中方将如何应对？
The China-US relationship is critical to the well-being of the two peoples and to the future of humanity and the world. No matter how the international landscape evolves, China always keeps its US policy stable and consistent, and always handles the relationship with a sense of responsibility for history, for the people, and for the world. Our position is the 3 principles proposed by President Xi Jinping: mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and win-win cooperation. They are a statement of the experiences and lessons of the 50-plus years of China-US relations, and represent the right way for interactions between major countries. They should be observed and acted upon by both sides. Specifically, mutual respect is the precondition, because interaction sustains only when differences in social and political systems are respected and acknowledged. Peaceful coexistence is the baseline, because conflict and confrontation between 2 major countries like China and the US have unimaginable consequences. Win-win cooperation is the goal, because when working together, China and the US can do great things conducive to the 2 countries and the world. At the historic meeting in San Francisco last November, the 2 presidents reached common understandings and charted the course for stabilizing the China-US relationship and bringing it back on the track of sound development. President Xi Jinping elaborated on China's fundamental approach and principled position on developing relations with the United States. President Biden reiterated that the U.S. does not seek a new Cold War, does not seek to change China's system, does not seek to revitalize its alliance against China, and does not support Taiwan independence. He also stated that the U.S. is glad to see prosperity in China and does not seek to contain or suppress China's development or to decouple with China. There has been some improvements in China-US relations since the summit in San Francisco. This meets the interests and wishes of the people of both countries and the world. But it has to be pointed out that U.S. misperception toward China continues, and U.S. promises are not truly fulfilled. The U.S. has been devising various tactics to suppress China and kept lengthening its unilateral sanctions list, reaching bewildering levels of unfathomable absurdity. If the U.S. says one thing and does another, where is its credibility as a major country? If it gets jittery whenever it hears the word China, where is its confidence as a major country? If it only wants itself to prosper, but denies other countries' legitimate development, where is international fairness? If it persistently monopolizes the high end of the value chain and keeps China at the low end, where is fairness in competition? The challenge for the U.S. comes from itself, not from China. If the U.S. is obsessed with suppressing China, it will eventually harm itself. We urge the U.S. to be clear-eyed about the trend of the times, view China's development objectively and rationally, engage in exchanges with China proactively and pragmatically, and to act to fulfill its commitments. We hope that it will work with China to bring the relationship back on the track of stable, sound, and sustainable development. This year marks the 45th anniversary of China-US diplomatic relations. President Xi Jinping pointed out that the hope of the China-US relationship lies in the people. Its foundation is in grassroots connections, its future depends on the youth, and its vitality comes from subnational exchanges. China is always ready to strengthen dialogue and exchanges with the U.S. and promote friendly exchanges in various sectors, so as to build more bridges for mutual understanding and remove unnecessary misunderstanding and biases. We believe that two sides are fully able to find a right path for the two different major countries to get along with each other. Thank you.
谢谢，请大家继续提问。请北区第3排第4位这位女士。
Next question, please.
外长您好，我是新华社记者。国际上很多领导人都认为，当今国际秩序未能反映或适应国际现实力量变化。中方提出了倡导平等有序的世界多极化和普惠包容的经济全球化两大主张，受到国际社会广泛关注和支持。您能否就中方倡导的全球治理方案做进一步阐释？谢谢。
新华 News Agency. Many leaders around the world believe that the current international order fails to reflect and adapt to the shifting power dynamics of the world. China's proposal to build an equal and orderly multipolar world and a universally beneficial and inclusive economic globalization has drawn wide attention and support from the international community. Could you further elaborate on China's solution to global governance?
Multipolarity and economic globalization are the prevailing trends in the advancement of human society. But there are different views on how they should look like. China believes in an equal and orderly multipolar world, and a universally beneficial and inclusive economic globalization. An equal multipolar world means equal rights, equal opportunities, and equal rules for every nation. Certain or a few powers should not monopolize international affairs. Countries should not be categorized according to their strength. Those with the bigger fist should not have the final say. And it is definitely unacceptable that certain countries must be at the table while some others can only be on the menu. We must ensure that all countries, regardless of their size and strength, are able to take part in decision-making, enjoy their rights, and play their role as equals in the process toward a multipolar world. An orderly multipolar world means all should observe the purposes and principles of the UN Charter and uphold the universally recognized basic norms governing international relations. Multipolarity doesn't mean multiple blocks or fragmentation or disarray. All countries must act within the UN-centered international system and pursue cooperation under global governance. Universally beneficial globalization means growing the economic pie and sharing it more fairly. All nations, all social groups, and all communities should be able to take part in economic and social development and share the benefits. Development imbalance, be it national or international, should be settled properly so as to realize common prosperity and development. Inclusive globalization means supporting countries in pursuing a development path suited to their own national conditions. No one should impose one single development model onto the whole world. Unilateralism and protectionism for selfish gains at the expense of others must be discarded to keep the global industrial and supply chains stable and unimpeded, and to sustain the robust and dynamic growth of the world economy. China is ready to work with all countries to steer multipolarity and economic globalization toward the right direction as expected by the whole world, and to make global governance more just and equitable. Thank you. Next question, please. Now News Egyptian Network.
Thank you, Mr. President Wang, Mr. Minister Wang. Thank you. I'm Ahmed Mohammed from Egyptian television. I'm working as a reporter and announcer in ChinaUS television. It's a governmental television in Cairo. From my observing on ground when covering Palestinian-Israeli conflict on the border with Gaza, I found the people suffering from hunger, stress, and the loss of all of safe livelihood. And another scenes of a large amount of humanitarian aid waiting daily to enter to Gaza. So, how can the international community provide protection necessary for Palestinian people? And we know Chinese just position on the Palestinian question has been recommended by Arab countries. What will be the way out of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict? What role will China play to this end? Thank you.
埃及尼罗河电视台，王外长您好，在实地采访中，我发现加沙人民遭受饥饿，生计无着，每天大量人道主义援助无法进入加沙。国际社会如何为巴勒斯坦人民提供必要保护？中方在巴勒斯坦问题上的公正立场受到了阿拉伯国家的赞赏。结束巴以冲突的未来出路是什么？中国还将为此发挥什么作用？
You represent Arab countries, and it's a very important question that you've raised on behalf of them. The current Palestinian-Israeli conflict has caused over 100,000 civilian casualties, and countless innocent people remain buried under the rubble. There is no distinction between noble and humble lives, and life should not be labeled by race or religion. The failure to end this humanitarian disaster today in the 21st century is a tragedy for humanity and a disgrace for civilization. Nothing justifies the protraction of the conflict or the killing of the civilian population. The international community must act promptly to promote an immediate ceasefire as its overriding priority and ensure humanitarian assistance as its pressing moral obligation. People in Gaza have the right to life in this world. And women and children deserve the care from their families. All detainees should be released, and all actions that harm civilians should be stopped. The calamity in Gaza is another wake-up call for the world, that the long occupation of the Palestinian territories is a fact that should not be ignored anymore, and that the long-cherished aspiration of the Palestinians for an independent state should not be evaded anymore. More importantly, the historical injustice to the Palestinians must not be allowed to continue uncorrected from generation to generation. Restoring justice to the Palestinian people and fully implementing the two-state solution is the only way to break the vicious cycle of Palestinian-Israeli conflicts, to eliminate the breeding ground of extremist ideologies, and to realize enduring peace in the Middle East. China firmly supports the Palestinian people's just cause of regaining their legitimate national rights, and is always committed to a comprehensive, just, and lasting solution to the question of Palestine at an early date. We support Palestine's full membership in the UN and urge certain UN security members not to lay obstacles to that end. We call for a more broad-based, more authoritative, and more effective international peace conference to work out a timetable and roadmap for the two-state solution. We believe that Palestine and Israel should resume peace talks as soon as possible to achieve the ultimate goal that they coexist in peace as two states, and the Arab and Jewish peoples live in harmony as two ethnic groups. China will continue to work with the international community to restore peace, save lives, and uphold justice. Thank you.
请大家继续提问。请中区第二排，第二位女士。
Next question, please.
谢谢主持人，王外长您好，北京青年报记者提问。我们注意到，过去1年来，中国先后为推动沙特和伊朗复交、缓和缅北局势、促进伊朗和巴基斯坦改善关系，采取了外交斡旋行动。这些行动都取得了很好的效果，成效也非常的显著，得到了有关方面和国际社会的高度肯定。有不少人都说，这样的事情只有中国才能做到。我们想问一下您，中国斡旋外交有何成功之道？谢谢。
Beijing Youth Daily. Over the past year, China mediated the resumption of diplomatic ties between Saudi Arabia and Iran, the de-escalation in northern Myanmar, and the improvement of Iran-Pakistan relations. These diplomatic efforts were quite effective and were highly commended by the relevant parties and the international community. Many say that only China is capable of doing that. Could you share with us what makes China's mediation successful?
Constructive engagement in settling international hotspot issues is a due responsibility for China as a permanent member of the UN Security Council. We learn from international practices and draw wisdom from Chinese culture. And we have found the Chinese way to address hotspot issues. In my view, the following 4 commitments are vitally important. First, we still need to uphold a commitment to non-interference in internal affairs. China always respects the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the countries concerned and plays good offices in light of their needs and wishes and in line with the UN Charter. Second, a commitment to political settlement. In addressing disagreements and disputes, willful use of force should not be allowed, let alone relying obsessively on pressure and sanctions. What is needed is to advance dialogue and consultation with the utmost patience and find the biggest common ground that accommodates the needs of all sides. On all hotspot issues, China always promotes talks for peace. We never add fuel to the fire. Third, a commitment to objectivity and impartiality. China forms its stance based on the merits of each issue. We do not use double standards or favor one side over the other or seek selfish geopolitical interests. All peoples in the world have a sense of justice in their hearts. Credibility comes before influence. Fourth, a commitment to addressing both symptoms and root causes. It's important to deflate tensions as quickly as possible to prevent escalation or spillover, And at the same time, it is also crucial to look into the root causes in a systemic and dialectical way and take a holistic approach to resolving disputes. Band-aid solutions are not advisable, nor are short-sighted, utilitarian or finger-pointing tactics. Our world is far from being tranquil, and peace needs to be upheld by us all. We will work with all countries to build consensus for ending conflicts, pave the way for peace talks, and strive for a world of lasting peace and common security. Thank you.
好，请继续提问。请北区第二排左起第二位，西班牙埃菲社 Lorena。
Agencia F.
Good morning, Lorena Cantor from FA News Agency, Spain. Mr. Wang, China's relationship with Europe seemed to slightly improve during last year, but there are still some tensions. So, what are China's expectations towards its relationship with Europe in the forthcoming months? And also, why do you think European countries have so far avoided joining the Belt and Road Initiative? Thank you.
西班牙埃菲社，中国与欧洲的关系去年有所改善，中国对欧洲有何期待？中方怎么看待有关欧洲国家不加入“一带一路”倡议？
Last year was the 20th anniversary of the China-EU Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. The two sides relaunched exchanges and dialogue across the board at all levels. The China-Europe Railway Express ran more than 17,000 cargo trips, connecting 219 cities in 25 European countries. It is a lifeline that ensures safe and unimpeded industrial and supply chains in a turbulent world. China rolled out visa-free policies for quite some European countries, facilitating travels and business exchanges. On the BRI you mentioned, in fact, there have been many successful China-Europe cooperation projects under the initiative. The Budapest-Belgrade Railway Link, the port of Piraeus in Greece, and the Pelias Bridge in Croatia are just a few typical examples. I remember a few years back, an EU policy paper labeled China as a partner, competitor, and systemic rival at the same time. However, facts have shown that this characterization is neither consistent with reality nor viable. On the contrary, it only caused distractions and created obstacles for China-EU relations. It's like driving to a crossing and finding the red, yellow, and green lights all along at the same time. How can you drive on? In fact, China and Europe do not have clashing fundamental interests between them or geopolitical and strategic conflicts. Their common interests far outweigh their differences. In the context of China-EU relations, the two sides should be characterized rightly as partners. Cooperation should be the defining feature of the relationship, autonomy its key value, and win-win its future. We hope that China-EU relations will move ahead smoothly with green lights at every crossing. A strong Europe is in the long-term interests of China. Likewise, a strong China is also in the fundamental interests of Europe. China and Europe should work together to practice multilateralism, advocate openness and development, and facilitate dialogue between civilizations. We are still of the view that in today's world, as long as China and Europe engage in mutually beneficial cooperation, no attempt to create bloc confrontation will succeed. As long as China and Europe stay committed to openness and win-win, deglobalization will not prevail. Thank you. Next question, please.
联合早报杨丹旭。
联合早报。
谢谢主持人。王毅外长您好，新加坡联合早报提问：台湾选举结束后，外界担忧台海的紧张局势会进一步的升级，并将冲击区域的和平与稳定。您认为两岸和平统一的前景是否变得更加暗淡了？您如何看待目前台海的局势？各方应该采取什么样的措施，避免紧张局势升级？谢谢。
联合早报。 Following the elections in the Taiwan region, there have been concerns that tensions will further rise across the Taiwan Strait and take a toll on peace and stability in the region. Do you think that the prospect of peaceful reunification is diminishing? What is your take on the current situation across the Taiwan Strait, and what measures should be taken to avoid further escalation?
The elections in Taiwan are just local elections in one part of China. The result does not change even in the slightest terms the basic fact that Taiwan is part of China, nor does it change the historical trend of Taiwan's return to the motherland. Since the elections ended, more than 180 countries and international organizations have reaffirmed their commitment to the One China principle and their support for China in safeguarding its sovereignty and territorial integrity. This sufficiently proves that the One China principle is already a prevailing international consensus. Those who connive at and support Taiwan independence are just challenging China's sovereignty. Certain countries that still insist on maintaining official relations with Taiwan are just interfering in China's internal affairs. I believe that someday there will be a family photo of the whole international community in which all members uphold the One China principle. It is only a matter of time. The separatist activities for Taiwan independence are the most destructive elements to the peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. To truly safeguard cross-strait peace, we must unequivocally oppose Taiwan independence. The stronger the commitment to the One China principle is, the greater the guarantee for the peace across the strait will be. Our policy is quite clear. We will continue to strive for peaceful reunification with the greatest sincerity. Our bottom line is also quite clear. We will never allow Taiwan to be separated from the motherland. Whoever engaged in Taiwan independence on the island will be held accountable by history. Whoever in the world connive at and support Taiwan independence will get burned for playing with fire and taste the bitter fruit of their own doing. People on both sides of the Taiwan Strait share a close kinship, and our roots as one nation cannot be severed. All people of Chinese descent should uphold the overall interests of the Chinese nation, jointly oppose Taiwan independence, and support peaceful reunification. Thank you.
请中区第4排举手的第2位女士是。
Next question, please.
谢谢主持人。王外长你好，环球时报环球网记者提问：去年中国周边外交以中国中亚峰会成功举行拉开帷幕，以中国越南将两国关系提升为具有战略意义的命运共同体圆满收官，可以说是红红火火，风生水起。外界认为，这是中国亲诚惠容周边外交理念在不断生根发芽、开花结果。请问您对今年周边外交有何展望？
Global Times. China's neighborhood diplomacy in 2023 began with a successful China-Central Asia summit and concluded on a high note with the agreement between China and Vietnam to build a community with a shared future that carries strategic significance. It was indeed a busy and fruitful year. Many believe that this shows China's pursuit of neighborhood diplomacy featuring amity, sincerity, mutual benefit, and inclusiveness has taken root and come to fruition. How do you envision China's neighborhood diplomacy this year?
Chinese people have a saying that a close neighbor is better than a distant relative. China and its neighboring countries will always be there for each other, and Asia is our common home. Making it a better place is the shared hope of all countries in the region. Since President Xi Jinping initiated our neighborhood diplomacy featuring amity, sincerity, mutual benefit, and inclusiveness, we have worked with our neighbors to open up new prospects for good neighborliness and friendship, and have found the distinctive Asian way for getting along well with each other. We stay committed to forging friendship with our neighbors. We respect each other's core and major concerns, maintain frequent high-level exchanges, and endeavor to increase mutual understanding and affinity among our peoples. The idea of good neighborliness and friendship has won stronger popular support, and the vision of a community with a shared future has taken root in the hearts of our peoples. We stay committed to treating each other with sincerity. we believe in seeking common ground while shelving differences, accommodating each other's comfort levels, enhancing understanding and trust through candid communication, and settling differences and frictions through dialogue and consultation. We work together to tackle risks and challenges and stand side by side as good neighbors in trying times. We stay committed to mutual benefit. We make good use of our complementary strength to help each other achieve development and revitalization. A large number of cooperation projects, such as the China-Laos Railway, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, the China-Central Asia Natural Gas Pipeline, the China-Malaysia Twin Industrial Parks, and the Jakarta-Bandung High-Speed Railway, have boosted growth in the region. We stay committed to openness and inclusiveness. We practice open regionalism, take an active part in East Asian cooperation, support ASEAN centrality, and promote deeper and more substantive China, Japan, ROK trilateral cooperation. The China-Central Asia Summit and the Lantang-Mekong Cooperation Mechanism have made robust progress. The SCO has become a regional organization that covers the largest area and population in the world. This year marks the 70th anniversary of the 5 Principles of Peaceful Coexistence. Although born in Asia, the 5 principles transcend differences in social system and ideology. They have become basic norms governing international relations and fundamental principles of international law, contributing the wisdom of the East to properly handling state-to-state relations. 70 years later, the 5 Principles of Peaceful Coexistence are not outdated. They are even more relevant and vibrant than ever. China stands ready to work with our neighbors to carry forward the 5 Principles of Peaceful Coexistence toward building a community with a shared future for Asia and for mankind, so that Asia can continue to contribute to world peace and provide impetus to global growth. Thank you.
请南区第4排中间位置 Sean。
Next question, please.
Good day, Mr. Minister and other members of the panel. I'm from CGTN. I'm curious, the Ukraine crisis now has dragged on more than 2 years, and at the Munich Security Conference just last week, you talked about, or last month rather, you talked about all China has done to promote peace, but at the same time saying the conditions are not right to move forward with peace talks at the negotiating table. When do you think conditions will be right, and what are you looking for to continue this pursuit for peace? Thank you.
中国国际电视台，乌克兰危机已持续2年有余。上月您出席慕尼黑安全会议时曾表示，中方所做的一切就是劝和促谈，现在回到谈判桌前的条件还不成熟。您认为条件何时才算成熟？
On the Ukraine issue, China has all along held an objective and impartial position and promoted peace talks. President Xi Jinping had in-depth exchanges with world leaders, including those of Russia and Ukraine. China has also published its position paper, and its special representative has traveled intensively to mediate among different parties. As we speak, he is still during an ongoing trip in the region, and all our efforts point to one goal, that is, to pave the way for ending the conflict and starting peace talks. One strong impression we got at the recent Munich Security Conference is that as more and more people begin to worry about a possible lose-lose outcome, they are ready to create conditions to explore a reliable way out of this crisis. Past experience shows that a conflict, when prolonged, tends to deteriorate and escalate, even to the extent unthinkable for parties concerned. In the absence of peace talks, misperception and miscalculation will accumulate and may lead to an even bigger crisis. Lessons in this regard should not be forgotten. All conflicts have to end at the negotiating table. The earlier the talks start, the sooner peace will arrive. As long as all parties abide by the purposes and principles of the UN Charter and their legitimate concerns are properly addressed, I believe a balanced, effective, and sustainable security architecture can and will be established in Europe. President Xi Jinping has put forward 4 points about what must be done. They are China's fundamental guide in seeking a political settlement of the Ukraine crisis. China supports the holding in due course of an international peace conference that is recognized by both Russia and Ukraine and ensures the equal participation of all parties and fair discussions on all peace plans. China looks forward to the early restoration of peace and stability on the European continent. It will continue to play a constructive role to this end. Thank you.
谢谢，请大家继续提问。请南区第3排。
Next question, please.
第3位女士，谢谢。
谢谢主持人。外长您好，中新社记者提问。那我们想了解中国外交如何更好地服务中国式现代化。还有呢，就是外界有一些声音，或是担忧中国的营商环境，甚至是唱衰中国的经济发展前景。我们想了解对此您有哪些回应？谢谢。
ChinaNUS Service. How will China's diplomacy?
In fact, China's economy grew by 5.2% last year, contributing to 1/3 of global growth. It shows that China remains strong as an engine for growth. The next China is still China. I also wish to draw your attention to a number of new trends. First, China's development is driven not only by a reasonable growth in quantity, but also an effective upgrade in quality. Emerging industries are booming. Green transition has yielded impressive outcomes. Social expectation is improving steadily, and new quality productive forces are taking shape at a faster pace. Second, China's supersized market with over 1.4 billion people is unleashing opportunities for the world. The explosive growth of new demands and new business forms is rapidly expanding the room for China's own development and for its cooperation with the world. Third, China is opening its door wider as more substantive steps are taken in its high-standard institutional opening up. China's overall tariff has been reduced to a level similar to developed country members of the World Trade Organization. Negative list for foreign investment is shortened to less than 31 items. All restrictions on foreign investment access in the manufacturing sector have been lifted. Opening up in the service sector is being advanced. Return on investment for foreign businesses is still one of the highest in the world. China prospers through interaction with the world, and the world becomes better off when China does well. Spreading pessimistic views on China will end up harming oneself, and misjudging China will result in missed opportunities. Economic diplomacy is an important part of our external work. We will continue to take steps to facilitate visits in China, including more convenient payment. I wish to share with you that starting from March the 14th, China will further extend, on a pilot basis, visa exemption to 6 countries, including Switzerland, Ireland, Hungary, Austria, Belgium, and Luxembourg. We hope more countries will offer Chinese citizens visa facilitation and work with us to build fast-track networks for cross-border travels and encourage speedy resumption of international passenger flights. This will make it more convenient for Chinese citizens to travel abroad and make foreign friends feel at home in China. We will organize more tours outside the capital city for foreign diplomats in China and build more bridges for local governments and businesses to engage in international cooperation. We will work with competent departments to work on the negotiation and signing of more high-standard free trade agreements, expanding a global-oriented network of free trade areas, and safeguarding the steady and smooth functioning of global industrial, supply, and data chains. We will join efforts to strengthen the various platforms for international cooperation, including the China International Import-Expo, the China International Fair for Trading Services, the China International Consumer Products Expo, and the China International Supply Chain Expo. We will continue to make the business environment more market-oriented, law-based, and up to international standards in an effort to stabilize expectations and provide longer-term benefits to global investors and partners. Thank you. Next question, please. Antara News Agency.
Thank you. question from Antara Indonesia National News Agency. In July 2023, China and ASEAN member countries agreed to foster the negotiation for a binding code of conduct for South China Sea. But regarding this kind of situation currently, is China still optimistic for the negotiation? And if so, what does China offer for more harmonious and peaceful for the code of conduct in South China Sea? Thank you.
印尼安塔拉通讯社，2023年7月，中国与东盟国家一致同意推动谈判，推进达成具有约束力的南海行为准则。为营造南海和平和谐环境，中方将在推动达成南海行为准则方面提出什么方案？
The Chinese people have lived by and worked in the South China Sea for generations. Since early days, the South China Sea islands have been territories under the jurisdiction of the Chinese government in accordance with the law. Nowadays, the South China Sea is the busiest, safest, and freest waterway in the world. For decades, 50% of the world's merchant vessels have sailed through this waterway, accounting for 1/3 of maritime trade, and this has never been disrupted or hampered. Despite the turbulence in the world, peace and stability in the South China Sea have been maintained thanks to the collective efforts of China and ASEAN countries. This does not come by easily and should be dearly cherished. The most important experience we have drawn is that we must adhere to two principles. First, differences should be properly managed and resolved through dialogue and consultation or negotiation between states directly involved. Second, peace at the sea should be upheld by China and ASEAN countries working together. These are also the core principles in the Declaration on the Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea, signed in 2002. On maritime disputes, China has been exercising a high degree of restraint. We maintain that parties should find solutions that are acceptable to each and all by working in the spirit of good neighborliness and friendship and on the basis of respecting historical and legal facts. But abusing such good faith should not be allowed. Distorting maritime laws cannot be accepted. In the face of deliberate infringements, we will take justified actions to defend our rights in accordance with the law. In face of unwarranted provocation, we will respond with prompt and legitimate countermeasures. We also urge certain countries outside the region not to make provocations, pick sides, or stir up troubles and problems in the South China Sea. On upholding peace and stability in the South China Sea, it is important that China and ASEAN countries continue to implementing the DOC and at the same time accelerate negotiations on the COC and establish regional rules that are more effective, substantive, and in line with the international law, including law of the sea. With strong efforts from China, the second reading of the COC was successfully completed, and procedures for the third reading launched. We'll work with ASEAN countries to strive for an early conclusion of the COC and ensure that the South China Sea remains a sea of peace and cooperation. Thank you. Next question, please.
请中区第3排第2位女士。谢谢。
好，谢谢主持人，我是凤凰卫视、凤凰网、凤凰秀的记者。我们关注到的是人工智能方面的问题。最近国际社会也非常关注，那很多国家也提出了各自的关于人工智能全球治理的方案。我们也关注到，此前中国也提出了关于全球人工智能治理的倡议。想请问中方认为，如何才能够保障人工智能它是真正朝着有利于人类文明发展的方向去发展？那另外呢，中方对于大国之间的人工智能领域的合作有什么立场？谢谢。
Phoenix TV. The international community closely follows the development of artificial intelligence, and one after another, proposals were introduced for global AI governance. China also proposed its Global AI Governance Initiative. In China's view, what should be done to ensure that AI develops in a way that is truly conducive to the progress of human civilization? And what is China's position on cooperation between major countries on AI?
Artificial intelligence is now at a crucial stage of explosive growth. We believe that there should be equal emphasis on development and security. New things and new opportunities should be embraced, and at the same time, brakes should be checked before setting off. Concerted efforts are needed to advance global governance on AI. The Global AI Governance Initiative put forward by President Xi Jinping last October has clearly laid out China's position and proposals. Our main focus is to ensure three principles are met. First, ensure that AI is a force for good. Development of AI should be conducive to the welfare of all humanity, in line with ethics and norms, in conformity with the rules of international law, and in keeping with the trend of human civilization. Second, ensure safety. AI should always be placed under human control, with constantly improving interpretability and predictability. For that purpose, plans should be made to assess and control various kinds of risks. Third, ensure fairness. An international AI governance institution should be set up under the UN framework, and all countries be able to participate on equal terms in the process of AI development and sharing its benefits fairly. I wish to stress that attempts to create small yard, high fence in AI development would result in mistakes with historic consequences. Such attempts cannot block other countries' technological development. They would only fragment international industrial and supply chains and undercut humanity's ability to tackle risks and challenges. China takes an active and open approach on AI cooperation with other countries and has established dialogue mechanisms with a number of countries. In the field of AI, cooperation between major countries is vital, so is capacity building for developing countries. So we will submit in due course to the UN General Assembly a draft resolution on enhancing international cooperation on capacity building of artificial intelligence in order to encourage technology sharing among parties, bridge the AI divide, and leave no one behind. Next question, please.
请中区第4排中间位置坦桑尼亚的这个记者提问。
Zanzibar Broadcasting Corporation.
Thank you. From Zanzibar Broadcasting Corporation. Recent years have witnessed the Chinese senior officials regular visit African countries, including Chinese foreign ministers visiting in January, as a continuation of the tradition of Chinese foreign ministers making their first overseas trip to Africa. At the beginning of the new year, so what will China do to consolidate its cooperation with African countries? As well, I noticed senior officials from US and other Western countries also paid frequent visits to Africa in recent years. How does China look at these trips, and China's concerned about the competition from the Western relation with Africa? Thank you.
坦桑尼亚桑吉巴尔广播电视台。近年来，中国高官频繁访问非洲，就包括中国外长今年1月访非，延续了中国外长每年首访必到非洲的传统。中方打算如何巩固同非洲国家的合作？同时，我们也注意到美国等西方国家高官近年来密集访非。请问中方如何看待这些访问？是否担心中非关系面临来自西方的竞争？
Chinese foreign ministers start their overseas visit every year with a trip to Africa. This is a tradition that has continued for 34 years. This is unique in the history of international exchanges. It is so because China and Africa are brothers treating each other with sincerity and sharing a common future. We have fought shoulder to shoulder against imperialism and colonialism. We have supported each other in pursuit of development. We have always stood for justice in a changing international landscape. Since the start of the new era, President Xi Jinping has put forth the principle of sincerity, real results, amity and good faith, and called for taking the right approach to friendship and interests. The endeavor of building a China-Africa community with a shared future has thus been steered onto a fast track. China has remained Africa's biggest trading partner for 15 years straight, and the pie of China-Africa cooperation is growing bigger. The Chinese and African people are feeling closer to each other. The global south, including China and Africa, is growing fast and profoundly shaping the course of world history. African countries are experiencing a new awakening. Models imposed from outside have brought Africa neither stability nor prosperity. African countries need to explore development paths suited to their national conditions and keep their future and destiny firmly in their own hands. In this new historical process, China will continue to stand firmly with our African brothers and supports an Africa that is truly independent in thinking and ideas. China will assist Africa in building capacity for self-driven development and support faster modernization in Africa. China always holds that Africa should not be marginalized. While China-Africa cooperation thrives, other major countries have again turned their eyes to Africa. China welcomes that. We hope that, like China, all sides will pay greater attention to Africa and increase input to support Africa's development and support the development with real actions. On the basis of respecting the will of Africa, China stands ready for more trilateral and multilateral cooperation. The next meeting of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation will be held in China this autumn. Chinese and African leaders will gather in Beijing again after 6 years to discuss future development and cooperation and exchange governance experience. I believe that through this summit, China and Africa will enhance their long-standing friendship and deepen unity and collaboration to open up new vistas for faster common development and start a new chapter for China-Africa community with a shared future. Thank you. Next question, KBS, please.
韩国广播公司记者提问：关于朝鲜半岛问题上，中国政府阐明了坚持维护和平稳定，坚持实现无核化，坚持通过对话协商解决问题的3大原则。中国政府能坚持这3大原则吗？另外，近期朝鲜半岛的紧张局势不断加剧，对此中方的解决方案是什么？谢谢。
Korean Broadcasting System. On the Korean Peninsula issue, China has stated the 3 principles of promoting peace and stability, denuclearization, and settlement through dialogue and consultation. Are these still the positions of the Chinese government? Recently, tensions have been rising on the Korean Peninsula. Where does China see a way out of it?
朝鲜半岛问题
The Korean Peninsula issue has been lingering for years. It has a clear root cause, that is, Cold War vestiges persist, a peace mechanism remains absent, and the security issue is yet to be fundamentally resolved. It also has a ready script. This is what China envisages as the dual-track approach and the principle of phased and synchronized actions. Currently, tensions are rising on the peninsula. This is not what China wants to see. The world is turbulent enough. Renewed conflict and turmoil should not happen on the peninsula. Anyone trying to use the Korean Peninsula issue to revive the retrogressive Cold War confrontation will be held accountable by history. Anyone undermining regional peace and stability will pay a heavy price. China maintains a consistent position on the issue. All our efforts come down to one thing: to champion peace, stability, and lasting security on the peninsula. The imperative now is to desist from acts of deterrence and applying pressure and move out of the spiral of escalating confrontation. The fundamental solution lies in resuming dialogue and negotiation, addressing the legitimate security concerns of all parties, especially those of the DPRK, and advancing the political settlement of the Korean Peninsula issue. Thank you.
请中区第6排第1位女士举手的这位女士，谢谢。
Next question, please.
谢谢主持人。中央广播电视总台国广记者提问。我们注意到当前呢，全球性的挑战层出不穷，国际社会普遍期待联合国来发挥更大作用。同时呢，有一些大国企图绕开联合国来组建自己的小圈子，对以联合国为核心的国际体系造成冲击。那么今年呢，联合国将会召开未来峰会，那么明年呢，也将会迎来联合国成立80周年。所以我们想请问外长，如何来看待联合国在这个国际事务当中发挥的作用？那么对于联合国的发展和改革又有怎样的主张？谢谢。
China Radio International. With global challenges emerging one after another, the international community looks to the United Nations to play a bigger role. But some major countries try to bypass the UN and form all sorts of small circles, which undermines the UN-centered international system. The UN will hold the Summit of the Future this year and celebrate its 80th anniversary next year. How does China see the role of the UN in international affairs, and what are China's suggestions for the reform and development of the UN?
China always believes that there is only one system in the world, i.e., the international system with the UN at its core. There is only one order, i.e., the international order underpinned by international law. And there is only one set of rules, i.e., the basic norms of international relations based on the purposes and principles of the UN Charter. No country should do whatever suits it or reinvent the wheel. The crises and challenges seen in recent years serve as a repeated warning that the role of the UN should be strengthened, not weakened, and the status of the UN must be upheld, not replaced. Over the last 70 years and more since its founding, the UN has weathered wind and rain and withstood the impact of power politics. It remains the most universal, representative, and authoritative intergovernmental organization. The core mechanism for achieving world peace and development, and an important platform for the many small and medium-sized countries to participate in international affairs as equals. China is the first country to have signed on the UN Charter. China is the biggest contributor of peacekeepers among the permanent members of the Security Council, and the second largest contributor to the UN's regular budget and peacekeeping assessment. In response to the development deficit, we advanced the Global Development Initiative as a boost to the implementation of the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In response to the climate threat, we support UN-led international cooperation on climate change and will make the world's biggest cut in carbon emission intensity in the shortest time frame ever seen in history. At the same time, the UN also needs to reform and improve in keeping with the times, to adapt to the new realities of international political and economic development, and to increase the representation and say of developing countries. Major countries, in particular, need to assume their responsibilities and help the UN, including its Security Council, to better fulfill its mandate, build global consensus more effectively, mobilize global resources, and coordinate global actions. China supports the UN in holding the Summit of the Future and reaching a pact for the future that benefits all parties. We will work with the international community to support the continuous development and improvement of the UN, taking international rule of law as the basis, fairness and justice as a principle, win-win cooperation as the goal, and effective action as an orientation, we will practice true multilateralism and promote greater democracy and rule of law in international relations. Thank you.
请继续提问。
Next question, please.
第6排巴基斯坦通讯社
Associated Press of Pakistan.
I represent Associated Press of Pakistan. Over the past 10 years, since President Xi Jinping put forward the Belt and Road Initiative, many countries have felt the tangible benefits from the initiative. Last year, China held the 3rd Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation, a grand event indeed. Even some Western media noted that the Belt and Road Initiative bears increasing significance in today's international landscape. Could you share the outlook for Belt and Road cooperation in the next stage? Thank you.
巴基斯坦联合通讯社，习近平主席提出共建“一带一路”倡议10年来，很多国家都感受到了“一带一路”建设带来的实实在在的好处。去年，中国举办了第3届“一带一路”国际合作高峰论坛，可以说是盛况空前。甚至一些西方媒体也认为，在当前国际形势下，“一带一路”价值更加突出。您对下阶段共建“一带一路”有何展望？
Since President Xi Jinping put forward the BRI more than 10 years ago, Belt and Road cooperation has indeed produced fruitful outcomes. The BRI has become the most popular global public good and the largest platform for international cooperation. It has also become a pathway to cooperation, opportunity, and prosperity for partner countries seeking joint development. At the 3rd Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation, President Xi Jinping announced 8 major steps that China would take. This marks a new stage in high-quality development of Belt and Road cooperation. China will work with all parties to uphold the Silk Road spirit, deliver on the outcomes of the forum, and usher in a second golden decade of Belt and Road cooperation. We will promote the upgrading of physical connectivity. We will continue to develop a multi-dimensional global infrastructure connectivity network that is high quality, sustainable, and resilient, and covers sea, land, and air. We will accelerate the development of a digital Silk Road, redouble efforts to build a green Silk Road, and work with BRI partners in addressing various new challenges. We will promote the strengthening of institutional connectivity. We will stay committed to the principle of planning together, building together, and benefiting together, stick to the philosophy of open, green, and clean cooperation, and keep to the goal of pursuing high-standard, people-centered, and sustainable cooperation. We will seek greater synergy between the BRI and the development strategies of all sides, promote both signature projects and small and beautiful programs, and make active efforts for an open world economy. We want to make the BRI a lasting opportunity shared by all. We will promote the deepening of people-to-people connectivity. We will have more inter-civilizational dialogue among BRI partners, support non-governmental and subnational exchanges, and carry out a wide range of cultural and people-to-people interactions so that the Silk Road spirit will take hold in people's hearts. The type of modernization China pursues is not one that benefits China alone. We hope that high-quality Belt and Road cooperation will serve as an engine of the common development of all countries and an accelerator for the modernization of the whole world.
好，请继续提问。
Next question, please.
请南区第6排左起第4位，古巴拉通社。
Prensa Latina.
Thank you. Good morning. Prensa Latina News Agency. Minister, the strength of the global south grew significantly last year. Cuba successfully hosted the summit of the Group of 77 and China, while the BRICS mechanism achieved historic expansion. Some Western media outlets and scholars believe that the rising global south is challenging the international order led by the West. As an important member of the global south, China has played an important role. What is China's comment on this matter? Thank you.
古巴拉美通讯社， 去年全球南方力量显著增长，古巴成功举办了77国集团和中国峰会，金砖机制实现了历史性扩员。一些西方媒体和学者认为，全球南方的崛起正在挑战西方主导的国际秩序。中国作为全球南方的重要一员，在其中发挥了重要作用。中方对此有何评论？
金砖国家发展壮大
A stronger BRICS
是维护和平
means
力量的
growing force for peace
是世界正义
and
阵线的
increasing support
不应该被
for
视为
justice.
什么挑战。
It should not be seen as a
从
challenge.
更广的意义
In the
上
broader sense,
金砖扩员
BRICS
是全
expansion
球南方
reflects
全体性崛起
the collective
世界
rise
多
of
极
the
化
global
进程加
south
速
and the world evolving faster toward multipolarity,
作为新兴市场国家
consisting of
和
emerging
发展中国
markets
家
and
集合
developing countries.
全球南
The
方
global south
占世界
now
经济的比
takes
重
up
已经提升到
over
40%以上。
40% of the world economy, changing the global economic landscape in a profound way. Independence is its distinct quality,
团结自强
and seeking strength through unity is its tradition.
全球南方
The global south
不再是沉默
is
的
no longer the silent
已经
majority,
成为
but a
国际
key
秩序变革
force
的关键力量，
for reforming
也
the
是反映
international
便捷的
order
希望所在。
and a source of hope as the world undergoes profound changes unseen in a
现
century.
在将来
China was,
都是
is, and will be
全球南方的
a
坚定
steadfast member of the
我们始
global
终
south.
同所有南方国家
We
同
go
呼吸
through thick and thin and head
始终
toward a
为
shared
推动
future
全球
together
南
with
方
countries of the
发展
south,
振兴
and we are
中间
always a crucial force for the development and
今年
prosperity
将
of the
是全
global
球南
south.
方合作的丰
This
收
year
年
will be a year of
也是
harvest for global
亚
south
非拉合作的
cooperation
新
and
起点。
a new starting point for
因为中
unity
国
among
同
Asian,
阿拉伯国家
African, and Latin
合作
American
论坛将
countries.
迎来
The China-Arab States Cooperation Forum will celebrate its 20th
拉共
anniversary.
体的论坛
The China
拉共体的
CELAC
论坛
Forum
已经建立10年，
will count 10 years of
特别
productive
是新一届
cooperation.
的中非合作论坛峰会，
Another FOCAC
将于今
summit
年秋天
will take place in China this coming autumn.
中方期待
China
各
looks
方
forward
共
to
享盛
jointly
会，
celebrating the
不断汇聚
milestones with
发
various
展中国
parties
家
and
团结合作
continuing
的
to promote
南方力量。
unity and cooperation among developing
我们也支
countries
持
to
俄罗斯
augment
办
the
好
strength
扩
of
员
the
之后
South.
的
China also
大金砖
supports
峰
Russia
会，
in holding the
支持
summit of
巴
the
西、
Greater
秘鲁
BRICS following its
分别举
membership
办
enlargement
20个集团
and
峰会，
supports Brazil and Peru in
亚太
holding
经合
the
组织
G20
论坛
Leaders
非正
Summit
式
and the APEC Economic
共同
Leaders
点亮
meeting respectively to
全球治理
jointly
的大
create
时刻。
a shining South moment in global
谢谢。
governance. Thank you.
请大家继续提问。
Next question, please.
请北区第一排第2位男士，谢谢。
谢谢主持人。外长您好，我是中国日报记者。中国日报客户端呢，在两会前再次向网友征集了一些他们关注的外交问题。那么除了刚才提到的一些热点问题之外呢，他们关注到去年中国在苏丹紧急撤离行动中，安全地撤出了1500多名的中国公民。那么他们还注意到了实施了领事保护与协助条例，推出了中国领事新小程序等等。那么网友想请问外长，今年外交部在外交为民方面还有哪些新的举措？谢谢。
China Daily. Our netizens noted that last year, more than 1,500 Chinese nationals were evacuated from Sudan and returned to safety in China. The regulations on consular protection and assistance was put into action, and the China Consular Affairs mini program was launched. What more can we expect this year from the Foreign Ministry in terms of diplomacy for the people?
我首先感谢
I wish
对
to
中外交
thank
的关
our
心及支
internet
持。
users for your care and
我愿意
support
回
for
答
China's diplomacy,
网民们
and I'm very
关
glad
心的这些问题。
to take up the
我们看到过去
questions
这一
that
年，
are of interest to
世界
them.
局势
In a year
变
of
乱交织，
changes and
但是
confusion
党中
around
央
the world,
时时放心
the
不下。
CPC Central Committee kept close to its heart the safety of all Chinese compatriots
一年来，外交
abroad.
部
Throughout the year,
驻外使领
the
馆
ministry and
全力
our
以赴
missions all over the world
把
spared
党中
no
央的
effort
温暖
to bring heartwarming
及时
care
传递
from the CPC
每一
Central
位
Committee to all compatriots in
我们加
time.
强海
We
外领
strengthened
导力度
consular protection
处理
abroad,
了各类案件
handling
8万多起
more than 80,000
发布
cases of
提醒
various
密信
types
6000
and issuing more than
我们
6,000
先后
reminders
从
and
苏丹
alerts.
从
We
巴以
evacuated
等地紧急撤离
thousands
了
of
数千
Chinese
名
nationals from Sudan Palestine, Israel, and other places, doing our best to protect the life and safety of Chinese nationals abroad. We continue to improve the functions of the China Consular Affairs app and responded to more than 530,000 calls seeking help on the consular service hotline 12308. We made the Chinese passports stronger. More than 20 countries such as Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand now have mutual visa waivers with China for all types of passports. China also promulgated its first regulations on consular protection and assistance to make for law-based, institutionalized, and standardized consular protection. Practicing diplomacy for the people is a ceaseless endeavor. This year will focus on 3 priorities. First, we will make full efforts to strengthen the system for the protection of Chinese nationals and interests abroad. We'll spread the knowledge about consular protection, work more effectively to issue security risk alerts, further improve the 12308 hotline, and provide efficient, responsive, and whole process services on the consular protection platform. Second, we will continue to build fast-track networks for cross-border travels. We will work for faster recovery of international passenger flights and make arrangements with more countries for visa-free travels and multi-year, multi-entry visa options. Third, we'll continue to improve in-person and online consular services. We'll upgrade the China Consular Affairs app and equip our missions abroad with smart consular service centers to deliver finer and easier consular services to overseas Chinese. My message is this: China carries out diplomacy for its people. Serving the people and meeting our compatriots' expectations is our abiding mission. Thank you.
因时间关系，现在请提最后一个问题。
Thank you. In the interest of time, we will now take the last question.
请中区第5排靠右边走廊，中央卫视方浩明。
China Arab TV。
谢谢主持人，王外长你好。过去1年，中国声音在国际上越来越响亮，越来越多人希望了解更多中国故事，这很大程度上也要归功于中国外交官的积极努力。请问王外长，您认为新时代中国故事的亮点和重点是什么？讲好中国故事有何重要意义？外国记者在讲好中国故事方面又能发挥什么样的作用？谢谢。
China Arab TV. Last year, China's voice grew stronger in the world and more are hoping to learn about China's stories. Much of the credit should go to Chinese diplomats for their active work. Mr. Minister, what in your eyes is most fascinating and notable about China's stories in the new era? And why is it important to tell engaging stories about China? What can foreign journalists do in communicating China's stories?
你是跳科目3那小伙子吧？我在短视频看到过。
Danced online, the 科目3 dance. Are you still doing it?
你这个问题问得还是很好的。
This is a very good question, and I think it's very fitting to be our final question today. Over the past few years, foreign journalists in China have covered many lively stories about China, from a string of Shenzhou space missions to the Fendouge submersible diving in the deepest oceanic trench, from reversing desertification to promoting low-carbon lifestyle, from the Asian Games in Hangzhou to the basketball games in rural Guizhou province called VBA. You have told the world inspiring stories of 1.4 billion people working as one for the Chinese dream. You have shown the world a vibrant China in the new era. Let me take this opportunity to express my sincere appreciation for the good work of our friends from the media. China's stories are fascinating. They're first and foremost stories of the CPC. For over a century, the CPC has rallied and led the Chinese people in a tireless endeavor, blazing the Chinese path to modernization and creating development miracles unseen in human history. This is the leading theme of the stories about China. China's stories are essentially stories of the Chinese people. The people are the lead characters of China's stories. Under the leadership of the CPC, the 1.4 billion plus Chinese people have been working tenaciously and building happy lives with their own hard work. This is the most notable chapter in China's stories. China's stories are also stories of common progress of China and the rest of the world. China keeps its development closely linked with that of other countries. Taking determined steps to reform and open up, China has grown stronger and brought benefits to the world. This is the most far-reaching part of China's stories. You ask why good storytelling about China is important. People need to realize that China's stories do not exist in isolation. They are instead important chapters of the stories of humanity. They speak to a truth. When countries proceed from their own national conditions to explore modernization paths, they will together make up a new, colorful vista of world modernization. There are now more and more foreign journalists telling China's stories. I've learned that one of them sees it as a lifelong mission, because China is a place that makes the impossible possible. So he believes this is not just a job, but a mission for him. I can see also more foreign influencers becoming popular with viewers from around the world for sharing their experiences in China. More foreign friends are welcome to join us in telling the stories of an energetic, bustling China and of China working hand in hand with other countries to build a community with a shared future for mankind. Thank you once again. Thank you.
媒体朋友们，今天的记者会到此结束。
Friends from media,
谢谢王毅先
that
生。
is the end of the
谢谢
press
大家。
conference today.
再见。
Thank you, Minister Wang Yi.
Thank
you all.
Friends from the media, this press conference now